Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's California Mobility Center webinar, SMUD Zero Carbon Plan and the Role of Zero Emission Vehicles. Everyone is in listen-only mode. However, you are encouraged to ask questions by using the Q&A box. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available to all CMC members following the presentation. At this time, I would like to turn this webinar over to CMC Chair of the Board, Arlen Orchard.
Hi, Catherine. Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to today's fireside chat. I'm Arlen Orchard. I am the current chair of the California Mobility Center, or CMC. And in my past life, I was the CEO of Smud. So this makes my conversation today a really interesting one. And I want to welcome my colleague and friend, Paul Lau, who is the current CEO of Smud, or the Sacramento Municipal Utility District. Paul is also a member of the CMC board, and it's my pleasure to welcome him today. And Paul, is there anything you wanted to add in your background? That I could probably talk a lot about you, knowing you for over 30 years, but we would probably just tell stories we shouldn't. So.
Well, first of all, thank you, Arlen. And thank you for the CMC for inviting me to come and participate in this fire chat. As Arlen said, we've known each other for a very long time. And I said, Arlen, semi-retirement has treated you well. I think you look marvelous. And so I'm really looking forward to having a chat, with you and about the CMC, about really what Smud is currently doing about, our drive to reach our clean energy vision by 2030.
Great. All right. Well, let's jump right in then. So Smud has a long and distinguished history around innovation and being a progressive environmental utility. But under your leadership, Smud's really gone on steroids, I would say, when it comes to decarbonization of its energy supply and its operations. Could you talk a little bit about the goal that Smud now has and your overall approach to decarbonization?
Sure, Arlen. I think as you were aware, even before I became CEO, the board actually adopted a very aggressive climate emergency declarations for Sacramento. And they really want to see what we can do to rapidly advance, our fight against climate change. So one of my first action items from the board and under the leadership of the board was to create a 2030 zero carbon plan. And this is a flexible roadmap for Smud to get to absolute zero by 2030. So I think this is the most ambitious energy plan of any large utility in the US. We are committed to remove all carbon emissions from our power supply by 2030. As you know, currently we have 5 power plants in the region, and we're looking at what are some of the ways we can maybe retire or repurpose some of those plants, but also really kind of taking an aim at the air quality in Sacramento. Because I don't know, you're aware of it, I don't know about the people in the audience, that Sacramento region, we actually have one of the worst air quality in the nations. Our childhood asthma rate is off the charts. We're more than 20% higher than the national average. And so our plan really focused on really kind of creating a new vision for the Sacramento area and for Smud. And our vision is really kind of bigger than Smud itself. So our new vision really is to become a powerful partner for inclusive zero carbon economy, to making sure that nobody left behind. And we had 3 goals that we actually created. The first one, to be absolute zero by 2030. But we also got to make sure that we maintain our world-class reliability, and we want to make sure our rates remains affordable. So we actually cap our rate increases to no more than CPI. So that's a very ambitious goal, as you know, but those are the guardrails that we needed. And when we adopted this plan, we actually had, I think, almost a dozen community meetings. And so before we rolled the plan, before we adopted the plan, we really actually took it out to the community. And we have for those who participated, I think we have over 700 community members participated, and we had like a 97% approval rate or favorable rate for us to say, this is something that you really need to do, and you really need to do for the region. And so how are we going to do that? We're going to do that, through innovation, which is, I think, why CMC plays an integral part of it, because we know we can't do it alone. So that means we really need to start thinking about all the new technology that you need to do to get us there. But more importantly, is really about how do you partner, because we can't do it alone. So how do you partner with our board and our customers? How do you partner, really with the community at large in the region? How do you partner with the private sector? Because we know we need money and we need innovation. We need the brightest idea to come do in Sacramento, but also partner with the regulators and really with the market operators. As Arlen, as you know, Smud, we are still vertically integrated as utility. We run our own balancing authority, and we also still run our own transmission. We own our distribution, and then we also participate in CAISO's market. We participate in energy imbalance market. We have a long-term relationship with both the Northwest and CAISO. So when we looked at it, we said, you know what, with this plan with an ambitious plan like that, what is the flexible pathway that you're going to go there? How you can get there? And we really kind of focus on 4 areas. One is that we've proven clean technology. So we know with wind, solar, geothermal, hydro, biomass, and short duration batteries, electrification, and demand response, those things are currently is in our portfolio. And we think we can get 80 to 90% of the way to zero. But the second piece we're focusing on, as I said, is new technologies, new business models, and new potential partners. And so this is really why CMC is going to play such an integral part for us, because we really do believe e-mobility is one of the areas that we really need to start to partner to research, to pilot, and really kind of bring new technology to scale. And now this could include, besides e-mobility, hydrogen, methane, long duration energy storage, such as flow battery and compressed air storage. And then the third area that we're focusing on is the natural gas generation retirement and retooling. So right now, our plan is to retire 2 power plants by 2025 and retool or reimagine the 3 remaining plants, either through some type of renewable natural gas or preferably like e-hydrogen. And so we're right now doing detailed reliability studies. How do you actually make sure that you maintain the reliability that you need and create and then finalize the strategy on what we need to do those plants. And then we also looked at really all the things that we need to do in terms of from a financial and regulatory strategy. So we have looked at the estimated cost ranges, the associated rate impacts, the potential revenue sources, obviously partnership and grants, the investment schedule for expanding our existing clean energy technology portfolio, and then all the research and piloting options. And so, as I said, partnership will be vital because we can't get to zero alone. And that's why CMC is such a great example of bringing, the partnering, the necessary partner together, but really more importantly, creating the ecosystem that we need. And so one of the things that we're doing is that we really want to attract investments and other external funds. And so I think right now, everyone's really excited about, the infrastructure plan and the Build Back Better America plan from President Biden's administration. So there's really billions of dollars out there available to address climate change and really reduce the impact of the customer rates, but more importantly, making sure our customers is part of the solution, but also making sure that no community is left behind as on this goal. And so for those of you who's interested, I think we have on our website, www.smud.org, that have that 145-page flexible plan that we have. And then I think it has a 14-page executive summary. So Arlen, I'm sure that you have read it, page by page, but this is actually very, very important to us. And I think one of the things that we really want to do with this plan is really kind of demonstrate that when you align a region together, when you align the policymakers together, we can create ambitious goals and really kind of create the pathway for us to get there. And Smud has a long history of setting big and audacious goals. I think we're the first utility to really kind of experiment with utility scale solar. I mean, we adopted the 33% renewable portfolio standard before the state became a mandate. And we also adopted energy efficiency measures or mandates 50% more than the state requirement. So we have a long history of setting big and bold goals and really achieving it. And this one is probably the biggest one that we have in the SMUD 75-year history, but really believe with our community behind us, with a customer behind us, and when we align ourselves with the regulators and then with the industry, with the private sector, I think we have a really, really good shot in reaching this big and audacious goal. I know that's a long answer to the question, Arlen, but as I guess you can tell, we're extremely excited about this goal. In fact, we're very fortunate. Once we published the goal, I was invited to testify in Congress about really how do you bring a region in to look at something big like this, so a big goal like this, and how do you partner with the community, and more importantly, making sure that no community get left behind, and making sure that people really understand the benefit of this goal, besides just the air quality, but it's really about the jobs, the clean job that you're going to create, is about inclusive economic development, and it's also about inclusive workforce development. So as you can tell, extremely excited about this clean energy vision that we have, and we're aligning the whole organizations to do that.
Thanks, Paul. That is a lot. It is definitely a bold vision. And I think I think for me, what's even more unique than the fact that Smud has this absolute zero goal by 2030 is that you really envisioned a much lower carbon footprint for the entire community that you serve. And so that in itself, I think, makes your plan unique in the nation. As you said, transportation electrification plays a big role in Smud's plan. Could you talk a little bit more about that role, and why is it so important to an electric utility that that you're focused on electric transportation?
That's a great question, Arlen. In fact, we get asked that all the time. The reason why transportation electrification is so important is because if you're going to talk about carbon reduction, you cannot not talk about both the electrifying electric vehicles and also with buildings. Because if just give you in context, our plant emits about 2 million metric tons of carbon a year, but the transportation and building sector emits about 8 million metric tons of carbon, so which is 4 times as much. Now, for those of you who's not really deep in the operations of the electric utility, because with all the advancement they have with technologies, with energy efficiencies, so Smud, our load growth has been stagnant. In fact, what it is both in our energy sales and our capacity, or our peak usage, is less than what it was back in 2006. So electric vehicle is one of the ways you can actually, if you start thinking about powering your car from gas to electric, is one of the what we call in the electric industry beneficial electrification. So it's one way for us to really maximize the existing infrastructure and power plants and capacity that we have in the system in a way that also improve your air quality, for the region. It also improve the economics, because I think, I think everybody kind of knows now that it's actually much cheaper to operate electric vehicle in the long run, total owning costs. But more importantly, it really removed the carbon, the air quality. It really improved the air qualities. And I think you heard me talk about earlier, Smud, our Sacramento region is one of the dirtiest air basins in the US. So one of the quickest and fastest way to clean that up is really to do e-mobility or electrifying the transportation sector. So I think what it is that even though our plan calls for absolute zero by 2030, what we don't talk a lot about is we're going to invest $2 billion in building and transportation electrification. And so what that does is that also remove an additional 1 million metric tons of carbon from the air. So our plan is actually a negative 1 million metric tons of carbon reduction, more than just absolute zero. And so when you do that, when you start thinking about if you can be a leader in showing at least in the US, how do you actually get everybody to come together to accelerate e-mobility adoption, then you can really help the local economy to create those jobs that you have. Like, for example, Sacramento, we have forecasted, to meet the state mandate, about 250,000 electric vehicles in the Sacramento region by 2030. And you're going to need about 60,000 chargers out in the, to support that. So this will create a tremendous amount of job training opportunities, inclusive workforce development, and really think about how do you actually help, some of those underserved communities transition in this clean energy future. So now one of the things that we're currently doing right now is that we're really kind of helping to lay the groundwork for the Sacramento for being designated as the first green city by Electrify America. So VW has committed $44 million to the capital region, and 35% of that is earmarked in making electric transportation more accessible in those historic underserved communities. I think you're going to hear me talk about all day today is about the kind of central theme to make sure that no community left behind. And since the EV industry is going to be such a big driver for economic development, we want to make sure that those initiatives that we're actually putting together to improve access to electric transportation in underserved communities, is in the forefront. So we're creating e-mobility hubs to engage community-based organizations and help them establish support for EVs. We have a sustainable community vehicle and infrastructure incentive program to address equity and move EV into areas that will benefit the most from improved air quality. And we really are working with workforce development efforts to create jobs in clean mobility. And Arlen, as you know, that CMC was instrumental in getting a $1.5 million, from the city of Sacramento to do work training in e-mobility and all the work that you need, all the workforce that you need to support this new industry. And then we also joined the Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality District to support the Clean Car for All effort. And this is providing a large discount to own and drive electric vehicles to residents of underserved neighborhoods. And then we're teaming with the Air Quality Management District in the largest school bus deployment in the United States. And just today, in fact, today, we're going to actually have a conversation, a working meeting with the Air Quality District, the Sacramento Area Council of Government, Regional Transit, to develop really a regional electric vehicle transition plan, for the region. And we're getting ready to go to Washington, D.C. to put those projects together and attract federal funding. So I think, as I said before, electrifying the transportation sector is probably one of the key things that Smud and the Sacramento region must do if we really need to transition to an inclusive zero carbon economy. That's why Smud believes so much in the California Mobility Center.
Thanks, Paul. And those are some great examples of partnerships you're entering into with regard to accelerating the transition to electric transportation in the region. I do want to interrupt 1 second, just say we are getting some questions. We're going to hold those till the end, and we're going to save about 15 minutes and we'll answer your questions, but keep sending them in the Q&A. So sorry for that interruption. Yeah. So Smud also has some really unique EV programs that you kind of have spearheaded to accelerate, not necessarily related to partnerships, but I think, Smud's been involved in electric transportation since the 1990s. So one of the first utilities in the country to focus on electric transportation, but you've got some really innovative programs. So can you talk a little bit about the programs that Smud's offering its customers as part of your partnership with customers?
Yes, sure. So the first thing that comes to mind is really our El Paso Mobility Hub, that we just make EV ride sharing and charging accessible to community. So this is really where we put an EV charging hub, with both hydrogen vehicles and electric vehicles that people can just go ahead and go online and actually reserve and use for free to go to the jobs, interviews, to go to a doctor's appointment for whatever the thing they need so they can start actually learning how to drive electric vehicle and the habits of electric vehicles and the benefit of electric vehicles. But also we have something called the e-fuel program to support a commercial fleet electrification. We have something called Charge at Home program. That's that we give up to $1,000 incentive to support installations of residential chargers. And we have a rate discount for EV drivers, which is a 1.5 cents kilowatt hour discount to charge between midnight and 6 a.m. And we just came out a new program called Smud e-Fuel Advisor. So this is a new program that delivers a no-cost, customized analysis of a business electric transportation future. So we're really kind of prioritizing business with fleet vehicles, employee parking, and multifamily dwellings. And then we're also doing a lot of research right now in terms of using managed charging projects for residential applications and a vehicle to grid project for school bus application, because we really believe that electric vehicles is going to play a very integral part in terms of how the grid is going to operate in the future. Because as you know, all electric vehicles could both be a load and a generator. And I think you've already seen some of the latest development, in the industry with Ford F-150 that you can actually have enough battery there. You can use it to basically power your house, an average house, for 3 days. So you can see, now all of a sudden that what traditionally in the electric utility where it's a one-way power flow, now with the really kind of the advance in the technology with solar, now with batteries, with electric vehicles, we are going to have a two-way power flow grid. And so how we actually manage the resources beyond the meters, and how do you actually manage and optimize the resources, on the traditional side, I'm going to say on the power plant side, on the market side, how do you actually play that? And I think the utility is going to play a critical role. And I think now the electric vehicle is going to play a critical role in the future of any utilities in the US, if not the US, really kind of the world. It's a new business model that I think the utility must adopt and must learn how to partner with our customer to be part of that solution.
Great, thanks. Well, first, let me thank Smud for being such a great partner, a founding partner of the CMC. We appreciate your continued support in the vision of the CMC. Can you talk a little bit about how you envision the CMC helping Smud achieve this bold, audacious goal that you've got out there?
I think CMC partnership is absolutely critical in really achieving our decarbonized goal. I mean, I think CMC really kind of provides the clients and members with programs, with access to funding and workforce and training development, really kind of to increase the pace of commercialization and adoption of electric transportation. I think, Arlen, as you well know, when we first envisioned the CMC, it's going to be a world-class, a world-leading accelerator hub, right, for all things as e-mobility. So we, Smud, want to be a part of that because we really believe that e-mobility is going to be a part of Smud's future. So I think what the CMC does is that it really kind of provides the clients, Smud, with unrivaled access to kind of motivate the customer base, a skilled workforce, as an opportunity to succeed in California, which is the nation's key market for electric transportation. So I think what the CMC is going to do for Smud is really going to be that, that beacon, to the world to say, if you're serious and you want to join the vision of a clean energy future, and you have great ideas, great technology, great business model, great funding, that great investment opportunities, you want to come to the CMC. You want to be joined as part of that ecosystems. And so Smud, obviously, we want to be a part of that ecosystem. So because we envision that the CMC is going to be a major partner in really helping us to put us together with those new companies, the new technologies that we have, is going to put us really, in line with all the regulators, in conversation with regulators in the, from the national and also the US level, in the local level. But more importantly, it's all even, right now, as I'm on the CMC board, I'm really getting a lot of inquiries from people outside the US because California is being looked at as being the leading implementers, right, of really climate change or carbon reduction policies in the world, and everyone is interested in what is the way to do that. What is the policy? What is the software, hardware, the whole ecosystem you need to make that happen? And I think CMC is right in the center of that. So we want to be Smud, want to be a partner of the CMC. We want to be an integral part of the CMC because we really want to make sure that the CMC vision about being that world-class accelerator or business commercialization accelerator and all things that you want to do to advance e-mobility is here in the CMC, and Smud want to be a part of that.
Thanks. And Paul, as we need to get you on the sales team for the CMC. But the CMC, our doors have only been open less than a year. March will mark our first anniversary of being open for business, and I think we've already demonstrated that we can be of value to Smud. Can you talk a little bit about what's already happened between that partnership between the CMC and Smud?
Yeah. So I think what it is that the first thing that pops to mind, because I was fortunate enough to ride in with Zeus electric chassis, right, is a CMC client. So I think Smud, we've been looking at, what's the best way for us to electrify a fleet. We've done a very good job in terms of the class one, the sedans and the light duty vehicles. So we pretty much we've electrified all those. But when you talk to class 2, 3, 4, and 5, there's not a market out there. There's not a manufacturer that would help us to basically transition the rest of our fleet into electric vehicles. So as part of the CMC, they put us in touch with Zeus, which is really one of the premier makers that in North America is all electric work truck chassis in the medium duty class. So with the partnering with the CMC, we were able to work with Zeus, and we purchased 5 all electric Zeus trucks. And we're going to be looking at how those trucks is going to be customized for our fleet use, for our line and substation work. And then really this vehicle is going to address a major gap in the commercial electric vehicle classes and support our goal to electrify our fleet by 2030. Arlen, besides having an ambitious goal to electrify, basically our power plant to get to absolute zero, but with a power plant, we also have a very ambitious plan to really electrify our fleet by 2030 to match, so that not only is our power plant carbon free, but our fleet is also carbon free. And so that's what we're doing. The first partnership already we have with Zeus, and another possible partnership with the CMC client is with Untitled. So this is an electric vehicle charging company based in California, and their modular microgrid technology make it easier and less costly to utilize clean energy. So our zero carbon officer is really looking at ways what we can partner with Untitled on a demonstration project. So I think really one of the big benefit of being a partner with the CMC is we have access to the latest technologies and the latest company that have new ideas that they want to bring on. And Smud is the big benefactor of that. We can actually see how those new technology work, kind of kick the tires, let our employees actually use those and really kind of demonstrate not only to us, but to the company and to the industry, what is the best way for us to electrify our fleets. So that's really what we see. And that's really how the CMC has helped us so far. And we are also, besides those two companies, we are talking to additional companies in terms of that we got from the CMC to start looking at, is there other additional partnerships that we want to create with those companies and also attract them to Sacramento.
So thanks, Paul. That's you've really demonstrated especially through your partnership with Zeus, something that's really important to our mobility clients, and that is you're putting your money where your mouth is, and you're actually executing purchase orders, which is important. And obviously, you've got a lot of industry, electric utility industry members that really watch Smud. And so the fact that you're moving forward with purchasing these trucks should, I think, in the long run, really help Zeus's sales. So that on behalf of Zeus, I will just say thank you for that.
So I want to tap back also. I mean, we've been actually, besides this, CMC helping us, we're able to have conversations with the city of Sacramento, the county of Sacramento, a lot of state agencies like Department of General Service, to really kind of show them that this is really what Smud is doing. This is what joining the CMC has done for us, bringing those partners to us. And so we could be, the kind of like the beta test site on those. And if it's successful, I think you mentioned about the purchase order, right? I mean, private investments and company need those purchase orders. So we're even looking at right now, if those things work out, can we do a bulk purchase or a combined purchase for all those so that, we can actually, number one, de-risk the investment for those agencies, but also, helping those companies grow and hopefully grow in Sacramento.
Yeah, and we've had the opportunity to introduce Zeus to Southern California Edison, which is also a member. So hopefully that will result in additional business for them also. So, you have talked or alluded to several times in your comments the issue of inclusive economic development and jobs. And I think that's an important part of what the CMC is focused on in partnership with Smud. And as you noted, it's important that nobody gets left behind, that communities that technology and advances in clean energy have often ignored early on, we're very much focused on making sure that doesn't happen. So can you talk a little bit about the workforce and economic development components of the CMC and how you see that advancing Smud's goals?
Yeah. So I think the CMC is going to play an integral part to create that inclusive workforce and economic development component of the CMC. I think, Arlen, is those of us, who are heavily involved in the CMC knows that even the location of really where the future, of the CMC is actually located in the promise zone. So really what we envision is that the CMC and the client companies will create a large number of new high-paying jobs through innovation and commercialization of those clean mobility technologies. So I think before we even formed the CMC, right, we had this vision that the CMC and its partner and its clients could create an economic impact of $2.5 billion in the greater Sacramento area over 5 years. And the CMC's operation could support approximately 8,500 jobs and then approximately 5,200 direct jobs and generate really about $974 million in total labor income over the 5 years. And the CMC and service provider are expected to employ 130 by year 5 with an average wage of $75,000. And so really one of the things that we want to do is that we really want to expand the client companies And we projected, if we if things goes as planned, that we're going to add about 1,900 new jobs over the next 5 years, with an additional to an estimate about 3,100 trainees and intern positions. And I think really one of the cornerstones I really love about the CMC is connecting new jobs in the mobility center with training programs for people living in underserved communities. I can't stress enough that one of the major tenets of our plan is that we want to make sure that no community left behind. And now largely through, we have Smud, as you well know, where Arlen, now we have something called the Sustainable Community Program, which you created. So we've secured kind of great partnerships, including the Sacramento Urban League, La Familia Counseling Center, Air Resources, Inc., the Sacramento Academy and Vocational Academy, Los Rios, our community colleges, and the California Conservation Corps. So really, and then CMC's alliance with Sacramento State, UC Davis, and the Los Rios Community College District really kind of supplies mobility companies with an educated, readily accessible workforce. And couldn't be more proud, the city of Sacramento approved more than 1.4 million for the CARE Act funding for the CMC. And so far, the funding has enabled about 270 men and women to complete the workforce preparation training. And right now, our Smud Sustainable Community Program is partnering with the Charles A. Jones Technical Training Program to launch the California Center Career Pathway Program, because we really believe there's going to be a huge industry in the e-mobility sector, and we want to make sure that the funding and the training and the access is available for all parts of the community, especially the underserved communities. So we'll be working very closely with the CMC and with the local agencies in terms of how do you attract dollars. In fact, when Secretary Groundhog, when the DOE secretary was here 3 weeks ago, we specifically talk about really all the opportunities that is available and all the funding opportunities that's available, from DOE in terms of help communities transition to this clean energy future, but in a way that provide the resources and the access to those traditionally have been left out in this transition.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I think the other one too is that I want to touch on is that, really kind of through a combination of the tenant improvement of the existing facility that's in Depot Park and the construction of a new really 110,000 square feet facility on Ramona Avenue, the CMC could support 150 direct construction jobs and 80 additional indirect and induced jobs in the greater Sacramento area. So, and this just the fact that the construction is probably going to generate a one-time economic impact of about 32 to 33 million dollars, in this multi-year construction period. So, as you can see, having a CMC in Sacramento is going to really going to amp up, this area of inclusive workforce development. And we're very, very intentional about really where the investment is going to be and how it's going to impact those underserved communities.
And that is a great example of how the CMC is benefiting the local economy while also providing value to our industry members and clients, because one of the things we've heard from both our startup clients, but our larger clients also, our larger members, is that talent is an issue and having a trained workforce is an issue. So, it's not just about the CMC doing the right thing when it comes to inclusive workforce development. It's also the smart business thing to do for our clients by helping them acquire the talent that they need to be successful in the long run. So it's really a win-win in this area. I'm going to go ahead and jump in and open with a couple of questions that we've gotten from folks, and then I have a few more.
Okay.
The first one is, are you planning to replace any grid sections with micro or nano grids? And I think there was a little bit of an addition to that, not connected to the grid. So maybe you can address how you've used micro or nano grids, both connected to the grid and not connected to the grid.
Yeah. So sure. So we've been looking at, honestly, where we've been looking at microgrid for a very long time. I mean, from looking at combined heat and cycle to now to really the latest that's really about having a solar plus a battery, and then with some type of even gas microturbines as a microgrid for both for reliability purposes and some really for lowering the carbon footprint of those utilities. I mean, for those companies. So we are talking for microgrid companies about, what is the best ways to integrate those microgrids, because even though right now, a lot of the microgrids that we're looking at is solar plus storage. But as you know that there's still challenges, technical challenges at having long duration batteries. And then the sun, in the Sacramento area in the wintertime, the production is not it's not the same as the summer. So we are working with companies in terms of, especially with clients or customers that has a additional need for reliability purposes, and then or a way for them to really lower their carbon footprint. What is the best way to accomplish that and still actually use the grid as a backup? And so that's one area that we are investigating. We are talking to customers in terms of what is the best way to do that, especially when you think about, as at least in California, right? You see there's a lot of communities that were impacted by the wildfire, that the reliability is obviously in the top of everyone's mind. So we are working with our customers and with vendors, who have maybe innovative ideas on microgrids and how those can be integrated as part of I'm going to say as part of the clean energy vision as the electric utility grid evolve. So short answer is yes, we are looking at those. And the long answer is that we are looking at, from how it would actually play out in the long run, because it's still something that's, at least with the solar and batteries, that's something that's new, that's coming online right now. And then what is and then with the long duration battery, how would that all play into the picture?
Great. So got another question, and you mentioned batteries, so we'll move right into a question around batteries. And I think between the two of us, we can tackle maybe a little of this. So the question is, could you cover or point to resources on the topic of battery waste impact to the environment from transportation electrification? Thank you for this webinar, but yeah, that is an issue, the issue of battery disposal. Yeah. And so if you want to jump in, Paul, and then I can add what I know about it also.
Yes. So that is one thing that we're actually looking at, is all the new resources coming on certainly, the impact of, what happens in live batteries. So I know the industry, along with Smud, is looking at, certainly how do you extend the life of those batteries with second use batteries. But we are actually looking at how do you create the recycling piece for batteries to minimize the impact, and what do you do with ultimately, the disposal of those batteries. So this is something that we are working with the industry on. We're working with really the environmental group on, and then really also working with supply chain in terms of what is the best path forward. But at a minimum right now, they are looking at, second use batteries to extend the life of those batteries. They're looking at what happens when the batteries is actually at the end of its life. Do you go through the recycling piece and what it would look like? And then ultimately, what is the ultimate disposal for the ones that you cannot actually recycle, what it would actually look like? So this is something that we're keeping a very close eye on, because as I think most people know, Smud is very environmental conscious. And so we want to make sure that we're not creating an issue down the road when we have this massive adoption of batteries, and certainly recycling and disposal of batteries is on top of everyone's mind.
Thanks, Paul. And I'll add a couple of comments here in that the issue of second life use of batteries is a big deal. What we do know now is that it may not be great for your car anymore, but it can certainly be added to your house now and provide benefit as a second life. UC Davis, which is one of our partners in the CMC, has been doing a lot of really interesting research on the use of second life batteries. So I would point some of you to that. And then I think another part of it in kind of the ecosystem and life cycle of batteries is to start to look at how do you remove the components of the chemistries of batteries that are really the hazardous materials, such as cobalt. And I'll point to Sparks, which is a client of the CMC and is a battery manufacturing company that has licensed some innovative technology from the Department of Energy, which is a cobalt-free battery. And as we know, cobalt is both a hazardous material, but also poses some really interesting or challenging, I should say, social justice issues in that they are manufactured in places like, or mined in places like the Congo, which provides some challenges from a social justice issue. So that's just a couple of extra points.
So Arlen, I think that's a great point. And in fact, we've been having conversations with companies outside the US, battery companies and universities, and about the advanced research that they're doing precisely to address that. Really, what are some of the new chemistry and some of the materials make up of the batteries that does not actually create this hazard or or this impacted environment, and especially about, as you said, both the environmental justice piece and the social justice piece. So that is actually a topic that is kind of being looked at worldwide now. So more than just the US. Certainly, I think the US is leading that discussion, but certainly there's a lot of investments outside the US that's doing that. And I think that's why it's great to actually have the CMC to start, putting that, in part of the area of the CMC, and then hopefully attract companies that is interested in doing this.
So got another question. Thank you for that. It says, though Smud is known as an industry leader for innovation, can you speak to the challenges you see large incumbent industries like utilities and automakers needing to work better with startups bringing mobility solutions to market? And then there's some examples here. Corporate issues like procurement rules, risk avoidance, and customer adoption can slow down innovation. Can you talk a little bit about those challenges, which are real, having lived through them as Smud's CEO, and now seeing the flip side of it with as the chair of the CMC? But can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I think we're very fortunate at Smud that but there's always the thing that about, I think utilities by tradition is a very risk averse industry, because, and rightly so, right? Because what it is that that we want to make sure the light stays on 99.99% of the time, because electricity is such a critical commodity for the modern society. And so when you talk about bringing innovation in, utility traditionally have a way that is a very long for us to evaluate something. It takes us a very long time to even think about adopting something, and we want to make sure every single risk is actually driven out of that before we put our toe in the water. So I think really with this new paradigm that I think utility needs to have, any company needs to have, is that whether you like it or not, I think climate change is one of the biggest threats facing mankind right now. And even if you personally don't believe in it, but right now, this is really where the world's going. So I think big company needs to get on board and really think about what do they play? How do they play? How did the industry play in this, I'm going to say, clean energy transition? And really be, I'm going to say, adopting maybe something I guess the computer systems. I mean, the information technology systems has always played this, adopt this agile approach to really think about, get new companies to come in, try new things, do it quickly, and if fail quickly, and just being willing to move on and not really afraid of failures. And the other piece, that's why I think the CMC is such a good place to be at, is because it's really kind of try to bring everything together, that the challenges that you have. I think Arlen, I think you touched on a very good point, because the utilities are so heavily regulated. I think most industry is so heavily regulated, and all those policies that's put in place to making sure that that you're spending the money in the right place, making sure that reliability is there, making sure your compliance piece. We need to look at the companies. There's certain things, certainly you need to make sure that you're compliant and you're safe and you're doing all that. But there's certain areas of the company that you really need to start kind of have a paradigm shift and say, what, this is okay to take, measure risk. And I'm going to use the word risk, is a measure risk about really taking a look at it. What happened if this thing fails? Can I recover from it? And can I learn from it? And do I move on? So really, I think any industry leader right now who's participating in this transition is really look at your company, identify what area that, I think the traditional compliance and safety model that you really want to make sure that you maintain, and what area of the business that you can actually afford to be more aggressive in terms of bringing new technologies, doing new investments, and even going as far as looking at the rules and regulations and the policies that is really kind of hampering your company from making those investments. And I know I'm going to put a plug for Arlen. I mean, he was instrumental in terms of, even for Smud, getting something in the legislature changed so Smud can actually invest our money in private companies, right? Instead of, right now, I don't know you guys know or not, being a public utility, we cannot actually take equity in startups. But because of really, I think with Arlen's leadership, I am going to put a plug, for Arlen's leadership, that he were able to really work with our legislature and get a legislation change to allow Smud to invest. Now granted, it's a pilot, it's something that that we're actually working on and we're participating in, but really about making sure that we can also identify policies and regulations that we need modification on to allow us to invest in areas that traditionally utilities has not been invested in. So I think, just to recap, I think utility need to really think about, or utility leaders or industry leaders need to think about, really kind of think about the different risk bucket that you have, what area you can actually participate in that risk, how you, if to manage that risk, you're gonna fail fast, what you can learn from it, and then really kind of push the organization to really have a different mindset in terms of what you can do and what you can do to manage that risk and how much investment you want to put into it.
Sorry, I'd gone on mute. I apologize. Great answer. Thanks, Paul. I think it's that's another area that the CMC can help, is that because clearly large incumbent utilities, as you've noted, look at things differently than startups, and their timelines are different. And sometimes those things don't translate well. So that is another area where the CMC is working with clients and industry members to help bridge that understanding. So you all understand startups better, and startups understand your challenges better also. And I think you've explained a lot of that. So thank you. Got another question. Seems issues between automakers and utilities is having a cohesive deployment strategy regarding infrastructure. Do you have any observations about what needs to be done to address infrastructure deployment and those seams issues?
I think absolutely. I mean, I think what it is that I think the utility is going to play a critical role in terms of the e-mobility transition. And so I think traditionally utilities do not sit down at a table with the auto industry and with people who put infrastructure in. So I think it's absolutely critical that the three parties actually sit at a table and really look for an outcome, or really look at developing an outcome or solutions that is a win-win for all three. And so I'm going to give a very good example of that. Arlen, as you were aware that Electrify America was going to put in DC fast charging infrastructure, and they're looking at what's the ways for them to minimize their operation costs and demand charges. So they were going to put batteries, in the locations where they have the charging, the DC fast charging infrastructure. And when Smud looked at it, we said, you know what, that's the area that we really have excess capacity. We really don't need the battery there. So can we strike up a win-win partnership that we can put the battery, so the investment that you have in your batteries, work with Smud, we can put those batteries into place that we can give you the same benefit that you're going to get, for putting the batteries, from a demand arbitrage and for usage perspective, and put it in a place that we can actually derive grid benefits from. And can we actually create that win-win solution? So from that conversation, set at the table to really to identify the outcome that each company is looking for and the challenges that they have to do those, we're able to come up with something called storage share. That we actually gave them, we co-invest in battery systems, and then we put it in a location that not only that benefit not just them, but also benefits all my customers, and we're able to give them the benefit of just like the battery sitting at the location where the charger is. So that is probably a very concrete example that I think utilities and industries need to sit down together and say, what is the outcome that you're looking for here? And how do you create that new business model that would create a win-win situation, but also accelerate the deployment of those batteries? That's something that you need for the system itself.
Thanks. And I'll give another plug to the CMC in that we're creating that table that you talked about where people can come together from different industries, because we have utility members, automaker members, technology members. And so we're creating this ecosystem where y'all can, hopefully we can help facilitate that discussion, and at the same time informing our client members about what those win-win solution, optimized solutions are, so that they can adjust or even think of new business models as part of what they're doing from an innovation standpoint.
Yeah, in fact, Arlen, next Monday, Congresswoman Matsui and Giovanni from CEO of Electrify America is going to be on site for the ribbon cutting of this, of the 4 megawatt batteries that we're putting in hedge that not only provide the storage share, portions, to VW, but it also includes inclusive workforce development piece. So those are kind of, I think, business models and new thinkings that I think the utilities and the automakers and the folks that all the companies that's involved in e-mobility to kind of come at the table and say, what is the best solution for us to move forward? And it may be it may look very, very different than what it is today.
Okay, we've got a couple of other questions. How does your innovation, this is a live one, how does your innovation commitment to affect other utilities in the region, such as PG&E? They seem to have a lot of outages in the Placer County area and wonder how this helps them become more reliable for the customers they serve.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that when we created the 2030 vision, we're hoping that we can be an example for other utilities to follow. And I think that so from a zero carbon perspective, you already have a couple companies, utility in the US that also has adopted the aggressive 2030 zero carbon plan. So, but when it comes to innovation, I think, people need to understand that, what is your purpose of innovation? What are you trying to solve? You always need to have the end outcome in mind. And so one of the things that I have a lot of good friends at PG&E, so I know there's a lot of great employees, who's out there doing his work, keeping the lights on in the PG&E territory. So, but at the same time, I also acknowledge that they serve a vast area, of Northern California, and the terrains and the type of infrastructure they put in place is not the same as Smud. And so I know their CEO has made a commitment to underground 10,000 miles, which is I think all the asset that Smud has, in the next 10 years, to address some of the reliability issues. And I know their company is also looking at really what are some of the new innovations and new companies and new technologies they need to really to bring into the company culture, and then also how are those technologies going to help them, to improve the reliability piece and to address a lot of the maintenance issues, that they're facing right now, and then also about what are some of the, I'm going to say, hardening, right, infrastructure hardening initiative that they have. So I think they're making good progress. PG&E is making really, really good progress, but they do actually have a big challenge in front of them. And I applaud the new CEO of really about taking some bold moves in terms of bringing technology and new business, new way to, to serve them by undergrounding, into high risk areas and try to really make a difference in how PG&E is going to operate. But I'm hoping that Smud could be an example as we are using LiDARs, right? I mean, new technologies, new optical technologies to identify things, the trees that may be actually even out of our right of way. And if something happens to it, falls, it could hit our line. So we're actually taking proactive moves with new technologies, with drones that we're doing. So hopefully, we could be an example to other utilities so that we can actually have shared learnings when a new technology work for us, or we hear from other utilities new technology that works. So I think one of the things that I don't know if people know or not, among the electric utilities, we have a very robust collaboration efforts. I mean, in terms of when you talk about the Large Public Power Council, American Public Power Association, even with the private, the EEIs. So we actually do a lot of shared learning about new technology, new business models, and new ways actually for us to bring those benefits to our customers.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Another question. Lots of questions today. So that's a good thing. Can you please express your view of what you mean by business model innovation and the role it will play in Smud's future? Okay.
So that's a great question who was asked that. So one of the things that we talked about, I think you heard me talk about that we need to partner, right? Like we have never before because we can't do it alone. So when you talk about new business models, a lot of times utilities, not just utilities, companies, when they want to put new capital investments or new things to advance the outcome they're looking for, they're cash strapped, so all the capital strapped. So one of the things that we're looking at is say, well, so why don't we think about, okay, let's say for example, we really want to increase the adoption of fleet, electrifying the fleet. And so when we talk to agencies say, well, I don't have a way to finance the capital side, because a lot of times companies look at the what I'm going to call the capital budget and the O&M budget in a separate bucket. So what happened is that even though from a long-term perspective, you can save on the O&M by switching, your fleet to electric vehicles, you don't have the capital to do that. So now we are talking to private equity firms and say, hey, you know what, can you create a model that you can create something like charging the service that, you can help a company electrify their fleet. It kind of saves them on the O&M side. Smud will guarantee that payment. So is there a way we can create a new business model that you can rapidly advance for companies who have those challenges with capital challenges? And also, making sure that, they have somebody, a lot of times companies that we deal with are not, they're also risk averse. So how do you, use Smud to create that new business model we just talked about? Maybe Smud will be kind of the convener, right, of the private equity firm, looking at the new business model of fleet as a service. That's Smud can provide a service to our customers. So that way everybody wins. The folks who are looking at, having the investment have a very reputable, solid companies that they're working with. And then on the client side, on the customer side, they know that when they're dealing with Smud and with the private equity firm, that we have actually done all the due diligence in terms of vetting out that company, also making sure that, financially, right, we're backing up the services that we're offering them so that they're not taking the risk by themselves. So this is probably one very real example that we're looking at right now, that we're working with the CMC in terms of bringing new companies in that would actually come out and help us deploy a new business model like that. And so that's probably one example that's popping to mind right now. So there's a couple more. There's charging as a service, there's fleet as a service. So those are the new stuff that, that Smud is thinking about, that instead of using Smud's money, we can be that convener that put, the private equity firms or all the people who has the money to invest, and the people who actually use those products, and then plus the people who actually are I'm going to say the OEMs and the companies that actually create those products and put them all together. Great,
thanks. Well, I'm going to use my my power as the host to ask one of my questions now, especially as we're getting close to the end. So you've got this bold 2030 plan, and the CMC is just getting started, and we see a long, fruitful partnership with Smud. So there'll be a really busy next 5 to 7 years. So could you talk about where you see Smud and the CMC partnership in 7 years, let's say? Just your thoughts, your crystal ball, Paul.
So my thought in 3 to 5 years, the vision that we have for the CMC is well on its way to fruition. It's going to attract the $2.5 billion into the area. It's going to create those 8,000 jobs that we're looking at. Bring into the area. That's Smud, at that point, see that by being a founding member and really kind of being, one of the anchor, I think, companies, in the Sacramento region, that we can actually benefit by really attracting a lot of new companies that are thinking about, coming into the Sacramento region. Smud is going to have, I'm going to hopefully at that point, Arlen, maybe we have 20, 30 or 40 different companies that we're working with to really help us advance the 2030 vision. And it's actually also creating the jobs, really attracting companies going to invest in the Sacramento area, at the same time investing, into the local economy, and also more importantly, having those partnership, with Los Rios, with the local, I'm going to say NGOs, nonprofit, non-government agencies, to really embrace, to say, wow, it was a great thing. It was a great thing. It was a great regional effort. That Smud was one of the founding members of the CMC, and that vision and that partnership is coming into full fruition, and hopefully maybe even more than what we forecasted, on the independent study. So when people think about the CMC 5 years from now, they're going to see them as the number one premier, I'm going to say, business acceleration hub for everything that have to do with e-mobility. And if they want to test new stuff, they want to come to Sacramento, they want to come to the CMC, and they see Smud as an integral partner of the CMC.
Thanks. And I think the beauty of the CMC is our reach is beyond Sacramento. We have members not only across the country now, but even into Canada and Germany. So hopefully by the end of this, we'll have a global reach. So that concludes our conversation today. Everyone, I want to thank you for being here. I need to turn it back over to Catherine for some final comments. So thank you, Paul. It's been a great.
Thank you, Arlen. Thank you to the CMC for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you. Please direct any inquiries for the California Mobility Center membership to membership@camobilitycenter.org. Once you exit the webinar, please take a moment to complete the short survey that will pop up on your screen. A follow-up email will be sent to you with a link to the recording. Thank you. This concludes today's CMC webinar.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Mhm.